Hello and welcome back to the channel once again for the final part of our series on the reading Key Stage 2 SATs paper for Year 6. Today is going to be the third part, so we're looking at the final text from the 2022 SATs paper. I'm not going to go into too much detail about when it is because I've talked about that in previous videos, but the reading test is on Wednesday the 10th of May next week. I won't talk too much about the kinds of answers, but there are different types of questions and answers in this test. Okay, so the overall mark for this paper is 50. 50 marks is the most that you can get. So let's get into it, and I'll talk through A Traveller in Time, which is the final text here, and how to answer the questions. So the first thing the children will do will be to read this text. It's the final text in the test. Usually, but not always, the final text can be the most tricky out of the three, and it usually takes the longest amount of time. So I would say, as a tip for the test, try to get further through the first two texts as quickly as possible. If you can get through the first two before 40 minutes has passed. It's a 60-minute test, so you split that up into three lots of 20 minutes. If you can get through the first two before those 40 minutes are up, so it gives you plenty of time to attempt the last one, because it's usually the most difficult. Okay, so once they've read The Traveller in Time, it will say that these questions, 24 to 35, are about a traveller in time, pages 10 to 11. So let's go through and I'll show you how to answer these questions. So question 24, look at the first paragraph beginning, ours was a steep. Penelope's description of the stairway makes it seem. So we're given 4 different options and we need to only tick one of these. And we're looking for evidence in the text that suggests that the stairway was one of these things. So it tells us where to look. Ours was a steep, so it tells us the paragraph to look in. So let's go back to the text. So as I've said before, a tip for the test is that usually the first few questions will be about the first part of the text. So instead of having to look through the whole thing, you can just look at the beginning, because that's usually where the answers are for the first few questions. And we can see straight away that it says ours was a steep, crooked stair with a handrail on one side, very narrow, with rooms leading off it so suddenly that it was easy to fall headlong as one stepped from a doorway. So what evidence have we got there? Well, we know that it's a crooked stair, so it's not even. We know that it's very narrow, and it was easy to fall suddenly if you were coming out of a door. Let's see what that evidence suggests then, and let's see which answer we should give. So looking back at the question, we've given 4 options. Does the description suggest that it's damp and dark, cramped and unsafe, old and dusty, stylish and never used? Well, given that it said that it was a crooked stairwell, very narrow, and it was quite dangerous coming onto the stairway, we would say that cramped and unsafe was the most obvious choice. So we tick that one. Moving on. Question 25. So this is our first inference question of this text. We know it's inference because it's asking for why. Why did Penelope like sitting in the stairway? So we need to give a reason. So what was the reason that Penelope liked sitting in the stairway? Keywords in this question are stairway and Penelope and possibly sitting. So we're looking for those keywords in the text. So looking at that first paragraph again, we're looking for a reason why she liked sitting on the stairway. We had wallpaper with leaves on it, like a green wood in spring, and I used to sit on the stairs pretending it was a forest, with birds singing around me. I was sitting there one evening with my feet tucked up in a blue dusk, waiting for the lamplighter to come. So she likes the fact that the wallpaper has leaves on it, like a green wood in spring. It makes her feel like she's not sat inside on a stairway, but actually sat in a forest. Okay, so let's go back to the text and use that evidence to write our answer. Okay, so we can give because. Because is a good word to use because it helps the children to give that reason straight away. So why did Penelope like sitting in the stairway? Because it made her feel like she was sitting in a forest. And that will be a mark for that answer there, because we've given the reason taken from the text. Question 26. Look at the first paragraph. So again, it tells us where to look, so we know where we're looking. Beginning, ours was a steep. Find and copy one word that shows that the evening was getting dark. Now, this is our first word meaning question of this text. I know it's a word meaning question because it says find and copy. That's a big clue. And just be aware that it says one word, not a group or a phrase. So we're looking for one word that shows the evening was getting dark. Okay, so we're looking in this paragraph here. Let me just get rid of some of these lines to help us looking for this word. So, I used to sit on the stairs pretending it was a forest. Birds singing around. I was sitting there one evening with my feet tucked under me in a blue dusk. Okay, blue dusk. The picture can also help here a little bit because you can see the sky is blue. And children, if they're not sure, they need to understand that the word dusk is a word for when the sun is setting, it's getting darker. Waiting for the lamplight to whistle down the street to bring a gleam to the stairway. There was a street lamp near, and this shone over the door and saved us from using our own gas lamp. So I was sitting there one evening, my feet tucked under me in a blue dusk. So I think this word here, okay, would suggest that, or one of these words here would suggest that it's getting darker. So back at the question, we've got find and copy one word that shows the evening was getting darker. I think dusk would be an appropriate word to put here. Okay, let's move on. So question 27. How did Penelope always know when the lamplighter was approaching? So how question. So this is another inference question. And how does she know that the lamplighter was approaching? So keywords in this question are lamplighter. Again, we're going to be looking at that first paragraph. It's about Penelope. So let's have a look. So can you find the word lamplighter? So we can see the keyword lamplighter here. So if I read around that word, I should find the answer. And the question was again, how do we know that the lamplighter was approaching? In a blue glass, waiting for the lamplighter to come whistling down the street. So the fact that he's whistling down the street, she hears him before she can see him. Okay, and that's telling us, that's how she knows that the lamplighter is coming, because every day he must whistle down the street as he's lighting up the lamps. So when writing the answer to this question, again, we can use the word because. We're giving a reason, because she could hear him whistling down the street. And that would be an answer for that 1 mark. Okay, question 28. Look at the paragraph beginning, I was suddenly. So we're looking at a different section now, but it tells us where to look. What suggests that the lady had seen Penelope? So what this question is asking for is some evidence from the text that suggests that the lady had seen Penelope. So keywords in this question are lady and the fact that she's seen Penelope. So what suggests that, how do we know that she's seen Penelope? Let's go back to the text and have a look. All right, so we're looking in a different paragraph this time. We're looking at the paragraph I was suddenly, so that's this section here. And we're looking for a reason that we know that the lady has seen Penelope. I was suddenly aware of how quiet it was. I might have been the only person in the world. Even the clock stopped ticking, and the mice ceased rustling in the wainscot. I turned my head and saw a lady coming down the stairs from the upper floor. She was dressed in a black dress which swept around her like a cloud, and her neck was a narrow white frill which shone like ivory. Her eyes were very bright and blue as violets. I sprang to my feet and smiled up at her into the beautiful grey face. She bent towards me. Okay, so the lady bends towards her, and here it says she gave an answering smile. Now, what that means is that when Penelope smiled at the lady, she smiled back. That's what that phrase means. She gave an answering smile. And also the fact that she bent towards Penelope shows that's good evidence that the lady must have seen her. So back at the question, what suggests that the lady has seen Penelope? She bent towards her and she gave her an answering smile. But that would be sufficient to get that 1 mark. I mean, you could even just say she bent towards her, or you could say she gave her an answering smile, but both of those points will be appropriate to get the mark. Moving on. Question 29. So here we're looking at the top of page 11. So once again, it gives us that tip of where to look, so we know where to look in the text. This question says, give 3 ways you can tell things have gone back to normal. So we've got to give 3 separate things. Now, the question's worth 2 marks. Now, usually in the mark scheme, it will say, if you get 3 out of 3, you'll get the 2 marks. If you get 2 out of the 3, you'll get 1 mark. But if you only get 1 thing, I think you don't get any marks for that. So we need to try and get all 3 if possible. So what we're looking for, 3 ways you can tell that things have gone back to normal. Okay, so back to normal. So after the lady has been seen and then she leaves, how do we know things have gone back to normal? Let's look in the text. This is page 11. Okay, so we're looking in this section for evidence that shows that the things have gone back to normal. I leaned over the rail to watch her, and suddenly she was gone. The clock ticked loudly. The sounds of the street came to my ears. The lamplighter's whistle, clear and round, fluted through the air, and the bright gleam of the gas danced upon the patterned walls. Okay, so before, when this lady appeared, everything seemed to stop. Okay, like time stopped, and she couldn't hear the clock anymore. But once the lady has gone, the clock begins to tick again, and she can hear it. She hears the sound of the streets come back to her ears. She hears the lamplighter's whistle again. So all of these things suggest that once this lady has gone, this ghostly spirit, that things have gone back to normal. So any of these parts here, and remember we're looking for 3 pieces of evidence that show things have gone back to normal to get those 2 marks. So we've got the clock ticking loudly, the sounds of the streets, and the lamplighter's whistle, and also the gleam of the gas lamp that came back and danced upon the wall. Right, let's go back to the question. So, 3 things. Firstly, the clock began to tick loudly, so we know that the clock is ticking. Number 2, that she could hear the lamplighter. And number 3, she could hear sounds of the street. Okay, so there you have your 3 reasons that would get you 2 marks. Okay, remember, like I've said in other videos, you have to give 3 different things. If you say the same thing twice, you're not going to get a mark for that. You have to pick out, especially if it's saying give 3 ways or give 2 ways, you have to give 3 or 2 different things. Okay, moving on. Okay, question 30. Haven't seen a question like this on the Year 6 Sats for a while, where it's almost like multiple choice. So it was interesting to see this one last year. But the question says, choose the best group of words to fit the sentences. Draw a circle around your choice. Okay, so it does say draw a circle. If the children underline or indicate with an arrow, I think you can still get a mark for that. But please remember to read the question. If it says draw a circle, then try and do that, okay? When Penelope saw the lady, she described why the lady was there, okay, what she could see and smell, who the lady was, what she could touch and taste. So we're looking for, I'm going to have to go back to the text, and we're looking in the bit when she saw the lady. How did she describe that period of the story, or how did she describe the lady? Was it why the lady was there, what she could see and smell, who the lady was, or what she could touch and taste? Let's go back to the text and have a look. Back to page 10 now, and we're looking for how she described the lady, or that time in the text. So, she went by as I leaned against the wall, and I pressed myself against the paper to leave the room, for her full floating skirt which took all the stairway. I never felt them touch me. Okay, so she never felt them touch me, and this gave me a curious sensation. Soundlessly she swayed down the stairway, and I stood watching her, smelling the sweet faint odour of her dress. So she describes what she can smell, seeing the pallor of her hands which held the ruffled skirts, yet hearing nothing at all. Now, if you were to ask me, she never felt touch her, but she did smell this lady, the faint odour of her dress, and she did see the pallor of her hands. So let's go back to the text, the answer question, and see if that helps us. Okay, so their options are why the lady was there, what she could see and smell, who the lady was, what she could touch and taste. Now, you can see where the mistake might be made if someone sees that the word touch and they circle this, but it's quite clear that Penelope described what she could smell and what she could see, so that would be the correct option. As soon as the lady went away, Penelope felt frightened, looked for her mother, felt relieved, looked for the lady. So, when the lady goes away, what does Penelope do? So we need to choose from these 4 options. Let's go back to the text and have a look. I leaned over the rail to watch her, and suddenly she was gone. So this is what the clock ticked. She hears all of this stuff. I ran downstairs. Okay, push open the door into the sitting room, expecting to see her. So if she's the lady vanishes and Penelope follows her because she wants to see her again. She wants to see where she's gone. The room was empty, and I went down to the basement where my mother was cooking, and I asked about the lady. Now, this question is a tricky one because a lot of children will think that she's gone to speak to her mother at first, but actually she didn't. She didn't go and speak to her mother. That wasn't the first thing she did. What she actually did was she went to see if she could find the lady. She wanted to see where the lady had gone. So as soon as the lady went away, Penelope looked for her mother is the one that some children circled, but actually it's not what she did straight away. In fact, straight away she looked for the lady. So that would be the correct option. Number 31. I went thoughtfully down to the basement where my mother was cooking. What might Penelope have been thinking at this point in the story? So this is an interesting question because it's asking us to infer what Penelope was thinking. You know, what's going through her mind at this point. It's not asking the children to make up an answer. It's asking the children to look at this part of the text and see, based on Penelope's actions and what she does, what do you think Penelope could be thinking? So let's have a look. Okay, so she went down to the basement where her mother was cooking and asked about the lady. The room was empty. She couldn't find the lady. So what's going through her mind at this point? She's probably wondering where the lady has gone. She's probably wondering who was the lady, you know, somebody unexpected that she saw in her house. And so these kind of thoughts are probably running through her mind, isn't it? You know, where's this lady gone? You know, who is she? Does my mum know about her? So let's go back to the question and see if that helps. I went thoughtfully downstairs to the basement where my mother was cooking. What might Penelope be thinking about this point in the story? So I would assume, based on the evidence in the text, Penelope was thinking where the lady went. Penelope was thinking where the lady went, or she was thinking who the lady was and wanted to see if her mother knew about the lady. Okay, that's why she's going down to the basement, isn't it? I mean, she knows her mum's in the basement and she knows that she can ask her mum, I've just seen this strange lady. Who is it? You know, maybe my mum knows. So that would be a correct answer for that question. Question 32. What was Penelope's mother's explanation for what Penelope had seen? Okay, so this is getting us to think about, again, inference. Why might Penelope have been frustrated by her mother's explanation? So let's try to answer both of these questions by looking at the same part of the text. So what was her mother's explanation? So what was her mother's reason for this lady being seen? Okay, and the second one is why might Penelope have been frustrated with her mother's explanation? Okay, let's go back to the text and see if we can find the answer. So for this bit, we're looking at the bottom of the text, okay? this bit here where her mother and Penelope are having a conversation together. So what does her mother say? Her mother says, "There is no one, child," she exclaimed. "You've imagined her. It is easy to think you see someone in the dusk with the flickering streetlights falling on the walls. It was a shadow of somebody in the street, perhaps." So her mother really doesn't believe her, does she? She doesn't think Penelope's seeing things and it's a trick of the light, that she's seen a shadow and Penelope's imagination is running away with her. "I was positive I had seen the lady and I described her." Mother was very quiet, as if she was thinking of what to say next. Then she changed the conversation, asking me if I would like to make some treacle toffee that night. So her mother really doesn't give her any time, doesn't believe her, and thinks that Penelope needs to rein in her imagination a little bit. Okay, so why might Penelope be frustrated with that? Well, Penelope says here, "I was positive I had seen the lady," and she's certain that she's seen this lady. And she kind of wants her mother's approval, and she wants her mother to agree with her and say, yes, there is a ghost in this house. But her mother doesn't do that. So she's frustrated with her mother's response. Okay, so what was Penelope's mother's explanation? So her mother believes Penelope has imagined her and that it was a trick of the light. Okay, that she didn't really see her, it was just her imagination and a shadow on the wall, possibly. Why might Penelope be frustrated with a muscle explanation? And this is another inference question, so we can use the word because in our answer. Because Penelope was convinced and positive, okay, which is a direct quote from the text, positive that she had seen the lady and wanted her mother to agree with her. Okay, she doesn't want her mother thinking that she's making it up and that she's imagined it. She's positive she's seen this lady. She saw her with her own eyes. Okay, question 33. Think about the whole text. What impressions do you get of Penelope as she describes her unusual experience? Now, this is a question that I did with my class quite a lot because this word impressions comes up a lot in the SATs tests. And when it's talking about giving impressions of a character, it's asking the children to think about what that character is like. Now, it's a 3-mark question, which means that in order to get the 3 marks, you have to give 2 points and you have to support at least one of your points with evidence, okay, from the text. So 2 points, at least one with evidence. And that's what I say to my class, can you give 2 points and support at least one with evidence from the text? And that will be the formula to get those 3 marks, okay? Now, in regards to impressions, lots of the children made the mistake of talking about Penelope's feelings, that she was scared, that she was afraid, that she was confused. But these are feelings, these aren't character traits. So the impression questions ask the children to give character traits. Now, what are some of the character traits that we could use to describe Penelope? Well, we could say that she's curious because she's wondering about this lady. We could say that she is unafraid because she didn't get afraid by what she'd seen. In fact, she wanted to find out more and look for the lady. We could say that she is brave. Okay. We could say that she is imaginative. Okay, because she's imagines herself being in the forest. We could say that she's observant because she saw the lady and she thought about what she could hear and she thought about what she could see when she saw her. Okay, so these are things that we could say, but are we right with these character traits? Which of these would we say that Penelope is most like? In order to do that, we need to go back to the text and we need to find some pieces of evidence to support these points. Okay, so for this question, you kind of have to use the whole text to get the character traits of Penelope when she describes her experience. But let's look at this section here. So I I was suddenly aware of how quiet it was. I might be the only person in the world. Even the clock stopped. Now, even that gives us an impression that she likes to spend time on her own. So you could say that she's solitary, that she enjoys her own company. I turned my head and saw a lady coming downstairs. She was dressed in a black dress, and it was around her neck. So she's very observant because she describes the lady in detail. Her eyes were bright and violet. She smiled at the lady. You could even say that she was friendly because she smiled at the lady. And as I caught my breath, as I stood aside to let her pass, I never heard a footstep. She was there before I was aware. So she realizes that there's something mysterious about this lady, but she doesn't run away. She went by as I leaned against the wall, and I pressed myself against the paper to leave the room. I never felt them touch me, and this gave me a curious sensation. Soundlessly, she swayed down the stairway. I stood watching her. She smelled her sweet, faint odor, seeing the pallor of her hands, which would ruffle us, she hearing nothing at all. So she's observant, isn't she? She observes this lady walking past, and she can give lots of detail about what she heard and what she saw. Okay, so that's evidence that she's very observant. She's also unafraid because in the text, she doesn't run away. She stands her ground, and straight away, she runs downstairs, pushes the door open. She's expecting to see her. So, if she was afraid of this lady, she would have run away from her, but she doesn't. She wants to know where she is. So this is also evidence that she's very curious. And the fact that she wants to ask her mother, who this lady was. Again, she's very curious as a person. She wants to know more. Okay? And you could say that she's determined because further down the text, she doesn't want to just take her mother's explanation. She's positive that she's seen her. So we've got some character traits there for Penelope, and we've got some evidence. So let's see what we can write for our answer. The first impression, we can say that Penelope is very observant because when she sees the lady, she describes in detail. All right, so that's our kind of point, but we need to add evidence. So, for example, this is where we're going to get that evidence from the text. So, for example, what does she describe? So she talks about here smelling the sweet, faint odor of her dress and seeing the pallor of her hands. Let's use some of that evidence in the text. So, for example, she said she could smell sweet odor of her dress and see the pallor of her hands. Now, you might think, oh, that's quite a long answer. However, that would only get you 2 marks because you've only given 2 points. Sorry, you've only given 1 point with evidence. What you need to do now is give a separate point. So we said that she's observant. Now, this point doesn't actually have to be with evidence to get the 3 marks. We just have to make an additional point. But I always say to the children in my class, if you can give evidence to support it, the more the better, okay? So let's have a look. We're looking for something else now. Curious. Let's go with curious, okay? Why not? So Penelope is also curious because she, when a lady disappears, she goes to try and find her. Okay, so we've made 2 points. We've said that she's observant. We said that she is curious. And I supported one of my points here, okay, with evidence from the text. So that, hopefully, would be a 3-mark answer. Okay, let's have a look at the next question. Question 34. The extract you have read is the beginning of a longer story. Which of these is most likely to happen next? Right, whenever we're asked about what's going to happen next, we know straight away that this is a prediction question. And with prediction questions, you have to not just, imagine what you think would happen next, but you have to do it based on the text. So what has happened so far in the text, and what does that suggest will happen next? So We don't necessarily have to go back to the text for this one. If we can think about the whole text and what we remember, Penelope will forget all about the lady. Penelope's mother will ask a lot of questions about the lady. Don't think either of these because her mother wasn't interested about the lady. And Penelope is so curious, she's not just going to forget about her. She's positive she had seen her. Penelope will try to find out more about the lady. Penelope and her mother will search the house of the lady. This is not likely to happen either because her mother just wasn't interested. But Penelope trying to find out more about the lady is probably the most likely prediction based on what we know about Penelope and based on the fact that she doesn't want to just accept her mother's explanation. So I think this would be the most likely prediction. Question 35. Again, we've got another 3 marker. There's usually 1 or 2 of these on the reading paper. And again, we've got 2 points to make. And just like I said before, we need to give at least 2 points, separate points, and support one with evidence to get those 3 marks. Okay. Give 2 ways using evidence from the text to support your answer. How is a mysterious atmosphere created? So this is a kind of ghost story, and the writer has intended it to be mysterious, but how have they done that? So we need to go back to the text and find ways the writer has made it seem mysterious. Let's have a look. So starting from the beginning, okay, first of all, how has he created a mysterious atmosphere? Well, I was sitting there one evening, my feet tucked under me, a blue dusk, waiting for the lamplight to come down. There was a street lamp, and then saved from us and gas lamps. None of this is getting mysterious just yet. I was suddenly aware of how quiet it was. I might have been the only person in the world. Okay, so here we're shown that it's very quiet all of a sudden. The clock stopped ticking. Now, this is unusual, isn't it? You know, that the clock stopped ticking. It's not something that would normally happen. And because of that, it makes it seem mysterious. Mice ceased rustling in the wainscot. So whereas she would normally hear these strange mice rustling all the time, suddenly that sound stopped. So these things are very unusual, therefore it creates mystery. I see a lady coming down the stairs. She's dressed in black dress which swept around her, okay. Her neck was narrow, okay. Her eyes were very bright. I sprang to my feet. So this shows that Penelope is shocked by what she's seen. Then further down, she never hears her footsteps. Well, that's unusual, isn't it? Yeah, if a person walks by you, particularly on a creaky staircase, you're going to hear some footsteps. But if she can't hear her footsteps, that's sort of strange, isn't it? Sort of mysterious. Also further down, the lady goes by Penelope. I never felt them touch me. So even though she walks past Penelope, she doesn't feel anything. Again, very mysterious, very unusual. Further on in the text, the fact that her mother says, "There's no one, child. You've imagined her." Okay, that also creates this strange mysterious atmosphere because we expect her mother to agree with Penelope. You know, we expect her mother to say, "Oh yeah, that lady works in the house," but no. Okay, her mother has no idea who she is. All right. So back at the question, can we give 2 ways that it's made to create a mysterious atmosphere and support at least one point with evidence from the text? So the first would be a mysterious atmosphere is created by the clock that stops ticking and Penelope can no longer hear the mice. Okay, so that would be a point. Also, Penelope doesn't hear ladies' footsteps or feel her touch her. Okay, for example, I'm going to support this point with some evidence from the text now. In the text, what did it say? Let's just double check. So it says here, I never felt them touch me. And it also says here, I stood aside to let her pass. I never heard footsteps. For example, my evidence would be in the text, it says, I stood aside to let her pass, and I never heard her footsteps. Okay, so once again, to get the 3 marks, have I given 2 different points? Yeah, I said the clock that stopped ticking and she couldn't hear the mice, so that would be my 1 point. And my separate point is she doesn't hear the lady's footsteps, and this time I've supported that point with evidence which I've taken from the text, and therefore I should get my 3 marks for that answer. Okay, thank you again for watching, guys, and I hope you've enjoyed this series on the reading paper. If you haven't watched the other 2 previous videos, they will be here on the screen at the end of the video, so please click on them, and there'll also be a video on the information for the SATs, which are coming up next week, timings, and when each test is taking place. So do click on that video if you just want to know more about what's going on next week in regards to those SATs tests. Once again, thank you for everybody who subscribed to the channel already. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe for more videos on primary education. We update the channel regularly, and hit the like button if you enjoyed the content. Thanks a lot, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.